So these were some cases, so let's go to some kind of synthesis and some lessons we can draw. How to get politicians involved. Well, in Holland and maybe also in Britain, we discovered that if you talk about we have to get people out of their cars, it's a negative message and nobody likes it, and it's difficult to convince a politician about that because he thinks everyone likes to travel in cars, and you ask him to explain to others that they shouldn't. He doesn't want to do it. But if you talk about giving smarter choices to people, smarter travel options, that's a positive message. And we learned in Holland that it works much better, and people get enthusiastic about it. Second, many mobility management solutions are quite logical. Like cycling, there are many good reasons for people, but also for companies to promote cycle use. So it's not something strange, or it's something logical. So it's possible to convince people about it. Of course, depending on their political color, etc. Green parties might be easier than right-wing parties, but there could be alternative solutions for right-wing parties, like the economic benefits. So it's important to find out what are really the triggers of your politicians. How could you convince them? Because there are many clues you can, many positive benefits of mobility management, and you have to find the right ones. And I think it's also very important to explain that not everyone likes to travel by car, because there are many negative aspects also for travelers, like congestion, and it could be scary, or if there are road deviations, you might get lost, etc., and you couldn't find a parking place. So there are many people who do not own a car, so you could make it clear, for example, and convince your politicians that there are people who need these alternatives. And it could help if other politicians do good work in mobility management to explain them that their colleagues are doing the right thing. Well, about creating support. If there's much competition, for example, your politicians are working on large road projects or are on many other teams than mobility management, and there's not so much support from mobility management, then you have a dead horse. And it's very difficult to move a dead horse. I didn't try it, but if you're in that situation, you better wait for a better chance, but don't start at that moment. If there's not so much competition, but also not so much support, it's more like a snail. It's going, but it's very slowly. So, well, there's not so much chance of being really successful. So, but if you are in the snail situation and you can find support, can raise the support of the project, you could become a dolphin, and then you're there. I think it's also important to make politicians visible. And on the left-hand picture, there's our Ministry of Transport with the white thing in his hand. He's celebrating the agreement of The Hague with many large companies, and he's on the stage. So put them on the stage, make them visible, that they realize something. And the right-hand picture is a former alderman of the city of Nijmegen, who is making visible that he likes car sharing. So it could be, for example, I think it's car clubs in Britain, we call it car sharing in Holland, and in many other countries as well. But for example, if there's a new car sharing site, ask your politician to open it. Then he is visible and he has to tell something good about it. This is also an important picture. As policymakers, our goal is to realize a good project, and the decision which is needed by the politicians is a means to realize this goal. But for many politicians, the goal is to make a decision, and that you need some things which need implementation. That's a need for them. So give them the space to make good decisions. And I think in order to convince politicians, make clear that mobility management is about win-win situations. There are gains for government, but there are also gains for employees and for employers, and also for public transport parties, for example. And I think the really clue of mobility management is that you make the benefits clear for all these parties. And I listed some of the benefits. I won't tell all about them, but there are many for all parties, and I think you really have to make them dedicated. For example, you could say it's good to cope with congestion, but if you make it dedicated, you could say, well, we have one particular congestion problem, like here in Cambridge. If we really work on mobility management, we can reduce this, we can solve that one problem. Then it's more focused and they get more enthusiastic. So find the wins for every party, and then you get awareness that, and you can bind parties together. And we said it's like a safe. And if you find the match of all benefits, then the safe opens, and then there's a lot of interesting things within the safe. So that's interesting to find really what's really mattering the actors in mobility management. Can you find the right match? Can you find the right target? And this creates a will to cooperate. And if there's a will, there will be an effect. So organize your own success, and also convince yourselves that mobility management could work and is a good thing. And so I want to end my presentation with this message that change starts with one person. So thank you very much for your attention.